Captain America Civil War. I'm very tired. Oh man, I couldn't even make it there. I'm very tired right now. It's been kind of a long day. Not a bad day, just long. You know how some Fridays can be. Really wanting the weekend to start. So I'm really tired, but I'm going to try and do my best to talk about this movie. I'm already flubbing my words, but whatever. Civil War, of course it's awesome! Did you have any doubt seeing these trailers that Civil War would not be just as fantastic as you'd think? So getting that out of the way, let's talk. This is a sequel to Avengers Age of Ultron, but also Captain America Civil War, where both of the events of that movie funnel down into this, a natural progression for the characters of the Avengers. Basically, the world's tired of the Avengers wrecking shit by accident, so they put an oversight committee led by, I think, the UN. Half the Avengers are for it, half the Avengers are against it, and it comes to blows. That's actually part of the movie. There's a good chunk of the movie that they haven't told you about in the previews, and this is spoiler-free, so I'm not going to say what it is. Yeah, that made sense. That came out right. It's by the Russos who did Winter Soldier, and everything about Winter Soldier that was good is even better here, which I didn't even think was possible. I actually have some friends who didn't really like the action in Winter Soldier due to the shaky cam, and starting out the movie, the opening action sequence, there's shaky cam in it, but when the movie progresses into the superhero action, it's smooth. It's easy to follow. You don't get lost. Basically, we are in good hands for Infinity War. The Russos and Marcus McFeely know what they're doing. The acting. There's a lot of dramatic moments in this movie. Like, after the first action sequence, it's pretty dramatic until a chase sequence happens. With talks about responsibility and personal injury and loss and just the things you never think about being a superhero would entail. Like, we all imagine being superheroes growing up watching the cartoons, saving the world. We never really think about the fact that when the buildings fall, people could still be in them. And they use both of these to bring the point home of, like, should these heroes be through oversight? And even though it's called Captain America, they give Tony's side, a couple of words to say too. Like, it doesn't feel like it's only airing on Captain America's side. They're also making a point for there being these oversights. And you flip-flop. I was flip-flopping, well, I see where they're coming from on both sides. It's, honestly, if you come in expecting to go for either Tony or Cap, you're going to be flip-flopping a lot. Because they both make excellent points. So the writing's good, the acting's good, the action's good. And the pacing's good. Like, this is the longest Marvel movie at 2.5 hours, and it doesn't feel long at all. It goes just as fast as any of the other Marvel movies do. Maybe not fast, but it's paced properly, and it's paced well so that nothing goes too fast, and when they bring in new characters, it doesn't feel forced. Like, there are some former Avengers and new Avengers that only have smaller roles this time around, but we do have some new characters introduced. Black Panther, who, if it weren't for Spider-Man, Black Panther steals the show. He's introduced naturally. It feels naturally. His suit looks friggin' awesome. He's an awesome fighter. He's a perfect throw into the Avengers. And as somewhat of his origin story, it works here. You think throwing him in and Spider-Man in with a bunch of other people from Phase 2 and Phase 1 coming together to have a brawl, you'd think he'd stick out, but he doesn't. And Spider-Man. This is his formal introduction to the MCU with all the Sony bullshit. And I don't know jack shit about Spider-Man. I've never read a Spider-Man comic. I grew up with the cartoon, but recently watching the 90s cartoon again, that cartoon sucks ass. I'm sorry. I've only really known Spider-Man from the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield movies. That's my only place where I know Spider-Man. And the good thing about Tobey Maguire was his vulnerability. He brought that to it. And the great thing about Andrew Garfield was his snarkiness, just his human feel to him. And all of that mixed with more likability than either of those will get you Tom Holland. And apparently to Spider-Man fans, that's what they wanted to see for Spider-Man. So hats off to you guys. You're probably going to get the greatest movie of all time next year once Homecoming releases. They could still screw it up. If you heard the podcast my buddy and I did that I uploaded a few days ago, you'll hear our apprehensions on Homecoming. But I think now I don't want to speak for him, but for me, I think we're good for Homecoming. And the superhero brawl, the whole movie is building up towards, and probably is centered around this. I don't know how long it'd be, like 20, 30 minutes of these Avengers fighting each other. And it's framed perfectly. This is the first time I've actually felt a comic book movie had panels from a comic book plastered on it. And I can't really get into more about that because there's a moment where you're like, yep, this is a comic book movie, all right. But yeah, comic book writers, modern comic book writers, you all suck to begin with, so take notes. This is how you do comic book fighting, all right? The bad parts. Like I said, well, this movie isn't perfect. Like I said at the beginning, the camera is a bit shaky in the first action scene, but that's really the only time there's that Borny-like complaint. And we got to talk about the villain. Marvel has always had a problem with their villains. And I know comic book fans are not going to like Helmut Zemo's portrayal in this, because it's not Helmut Zemo. It's some dude that has the name Helmut Zemo. He's not at all what he is in the comics. But Daniel Bruhl's take on the character is much different. It works wonderful for the story they're trying to tell. And he's probably one of my favorite Marvel antagonists. Since Loki, probably. He's not 100% compelling as Loki, though. He's not as charismatic as Loki. But he's a lot better than he should be for being somebody who's Zemo in name only. So there's that caveat. If you wanted to see the guy in the purple mask that stuck to his face, you're not going to get that. So yeah, there's a lot about this movie I really can't talk about because a whole bunch of stuff happens in it. Like, a whole bunch of stuff. And you'd think that would drag the movie down, but the way it's directed, the way it's paced, all the stuff that happens in the movie does not drag it down at all. This movie is kind of a miracle when you think about that. And this is also kind of a first impression. I've only seen this movie once. I'm seeing it again tomorrow with some friends. And maybe I'll see more things that didn't work. Maybe I'll see more things that did work. I actually got into this movie without going through the bathroom once, and that was kind of torture, but it was worth it. And there's a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. But I will be back sometime down the road for a spoiler talk about this movie. Maybe I'll have a friend or two on here to talk about the ins and outs of this movie, because a lot needs to be talked about in this movie. Why it worked so much well. Yeah, that's a phrase. Anyway, I am tired, but this movie is definitely worth staying up late to go see it multiple times for. Those are my thoughts. There's a comment section down there. What'd you think about this movie? Was it awesome? Did you hate it? Why did you hate it? If you honestly didn't like this movie, please tell me. I'm not gonna, say your opinion's wrong or anything, but if you didn't like this movie, tell me why. That's a voice that needs to be heard. I love this movie. You should all go see it, but if you didn't, let me know. And I'll be back soon with a lot more videos. Thank you very much for watching.